The King of Limbs is the eighth studio album by the English rock band Radiohead, produced by Nigel Godrich. It was self-released on February 18, 2011 as a download in MP3 and WAV formats, followed by physical CD and 12 inches vinyl releases on March 28 and a special newspaper edition on May 9, 2011. The physical editions were released through the band's ticker tape imprint on XL in the United Kingdom, TBD in the United States, and Hostess Entertainment in Japan. Following the protracted recording and more conventional rock instrumentation of In Rainbows, Radiohead developed The King of Limbs by sampling and looping their recordings. Singer Thom Yorke described the album as an expression of wildness and mutation. Radiohead released no singles from the album, but released a music video for Lotus Flower that spawned an internet meme. The album was named one of the best albums of 2011 by publications including The Wire, the NME, and Pop Matters, and was nominated for 5 categories in the 54th Grammy Awards, including Best Alternative Music Album. It sold an estimated 300,000 to 400,000 download copies in 2 months of release and became a bestseller on vinyl. The album was followed in the same year by a remix album, TKOLRMX 1,234,567, and a live video, The King of Limbs, Live from the Basement. Recording. Like Radiohead's sixth album, Hail to the Thief, The King of Limbs was recorded in Los Angeles, possibly at the home of actress Drew Barrymore, who is thanked in the album's liner notes. The recording differed from the difficult sessions for Radiohead's previous album In Rainbows. Guitarist Ed O'Brien said, "We decided at the end of In Rainbows never to do it like this again. That was kind of the end of Radiohead Mark II." Singer Thom Yorke said the band had felt that if we are gonna carry on, we need to do it for a new set of reasons. In September 2010, drummer Phil Selway said Radiohead had been recording intermittently for a year. Where In Rainbows was developed from Radiohead's live performances, Selway said that the King of Limbs sessions had been quite the opposite. Multi-instrumentalist and programmer Johnny Greenwood told Rolling Stone that the band didn't want to pick up guitars and write chord sequences. "We didn't want to sit in front of a computer either. We wanted a third thing, which involved playing and programming." Radiohead experimented with a turntable and vinyl emulation software to sample and manipulate music they had been working on, using sampler software written by Greenwood. Yorke likened the process of editing and arranging pre-recorded sounds and ideas to editing a film. O'Brien said, "Music came first, then the lyrics, and the melody came after. So we had blocks of music and then Thom would write a lead vocal line melody and lyrics to it." In 2012, he told Rolling Stone, "The brick walls we tended to hit were when we knew something was great, like Bloom, but not finished. We knew the song was nearly something. Then, bassist Colin Greenwood had that bass line, and Thom started singing. Those things suddenly made it 100 times better." According to the Los Angeles Times writer G.R. Rui Cook, Radiohead held a wrap-up party for the album on January 30, 2011. Appearing on a BBC radio show in April 2011, O'Brien explained that Radiohead felt the ideal album was around 40 minutes long, and cited Marvin Gaye's What's Going On as a classic record shorter than The King of Limbs. Cover artist Stanley Donwood said, "In Rainbows was very much a definitive statement, and that isn't where the band are at the moment. Where they are now is more transitory. This album shows where Radiohead are at the moment the record was released. The music is a continuing thing. And we wanted to make the album representative of that." Music and lyrics. The King of Limbs emphasizes drummer Selway and bassist Colin Greenwood's rhythm section. O'Brien said, "The rhythm dictates the record. It's very important. The rhythm is king." The album makes prominent use of sampling, looping, and ambient sounds, including samples of natural sounds such as birdsong and wind. Several critics noted dubstep influences. The first track, Bloom, opens with a repeating piano loop and features complex rhythms and a flageolan arrangement by Johnny Greenwood. Morning Mr. Magpie, debuted as a solo acoustic performance by Yorke in a week cast in 2002, appears with a repeating electric guitar riff and a looping hi-hat pattern. Little by Little features intricate guitar playing over busy, syncopated percussion. Feral is an instrumental with wordless, processed vocals, cut-up drum loops, and a distorted synth bass line. Lotus Flower features a driving synth bass line and Yorke's falsetto vocals. Codex is a downtempo piano ballad with flagellants and strings. Give Up the Ghost is an acoustic guitar ballad with call and response vocal harmonies. The final track, Separator, features a loop drum pattern and a Neil Young-inspired electric guitar riff. Yorke told NPR that he felt The King of Limbs was a visual album, with lyrics and artwork about wildness, and mutating inspired by his environmental concerns. The album title possibly refers to an oak tree in Wiltshire's Savernake Forest thought to be 1,000 years old. Yorke rejected the suggestion that The King of Limbs was experimental music, saying that Radiohead were constantly absorbing music, and their songs were a reflection of their learning and stealing from other artists. Packaging and artwork. The King of Limbs artwork was created by Yorke and Stanley Donwood, who has worked with Radiohead since their second album, The Bends. Donwood originally intended to paint oil portraits of the Radiohead members in the style of Gerard Richter, but abandoned the idea. I'd never painted with oils before and I'm not Gerard Richter, so it was just a series of painted disasters. The final artwork was influenced by Northern European fairy tales and their association with nature and woods. As with previous Radiohead albums, Donwood worked on the artwork as the band recorded nearby. The music made Donwood think of immense multicolored cathedrals of trees, with music echoing from the branches while strange fauna lurked in the fog. He and Yorke drew trees with eyes, limbs, mouths and familiars, creating, according to Donwood, strange, multi-limbed creatures that are neither malevolent or benevolent, they're simply there, part of the living spirit of the forest. For the special newspaper edition of The King of Limbs, Donwood wanted to create something in a state of flux. He chose newspaper for its ephemeral nature, admiring how paper fades in sunlight. This reflected the album's nature themes, mirroring the inevitable decay that comes with being alive. Donwood took inspiration from real publications, including weekend broadsheets and a stack of radical 1960s newspapers and magazines left at bassist Colin Greenwood's house by an unknown person. The newspaper edition of The King of Limbs was nominated for the Best Boxed or Special Limited Edition package in the 54th Grammy Awards. Release: Radiohead announced The King of Limbs on their website on February 14, 2011 with a release date of February 19. They released the album on February 18, one day earlier than announced. The download of The King of Limbs is DRM-free. The MP3 download costs £6, $9 or $7. The WAV download costs £9, $14 or $11. Customers could also order a special newspaper edition of the album, released May 9, 2011, for £30, $48 or $36 with the MP3 download, and £33, $53 or $39 with the WAV download. The newspaper edition contains two 10-inch vinyl records in a special record sleeve, many large sheets of artwork, 625 tiny pieces of artwork, a compact disc, and a color piece of oxo-degradable plastic package. The retail CD and vinyl editions of The King of Limbs were released through the band's ticker tape imprint on XL in the United Kingdom, TBD in the United States, and Hostess Entertainment in Japan. On April 16, 2011, Radiohead released two tracks not included on The King of Limbs but worked on during the same sessions, Super Collider, and The Butcher, as a double single for Record Store Day. They later released the tracks as free downloads to those who purchased The King of Limbs from the Radiohead website. In June 2011, Radiohead announced a series of King of Limbs remix singles by various artists. These remixes and others are compiled on the remix album TKOLRMX 1,234,567, released in September 2011. Radiohead performed The King of Limbs in its entirety for The King of Limbs, Live from the Basement, broadcast in July 2011 and released on DVD and Blu-ray in December 2011. On February 11, 2014, Radiohead released the Polyfauna app for Android and iOS. It is an experimental collaboration between the band and the British digital art studio Universal Everything, and uses musical elements and imagery from The King of Limbs. Promotion and tour. Radiohead released a music video for Lotus Flower on their YouTube channel on February 16, 2011, featuring black and white footage of Yorke dancing. It was directed by Hammer and Tongs member Garth Jennings and choreographed by Wayne McGregor. The video sparked the Dancing Thom Yorke internet meme, whereby people replaced the video's audio or edited the visuals, and Tomdance became a trending hashtag on Twitter. To promote the retail release of The King of Limbs, Radiohead distributed a free single-issue newspaper, The Universal Sigh, at independent record shops across the world on March 28, 2011. Influenced by free newspapers such as LA Weekly or London Light, The Universal Sigh is a 12-page tabloid printed using web-offset lithography on newsprint paper and features artwork, poetry, and lyrics, and short stories by Don Wood, Jay Griffiths and Robert McFarlane. Don Wood and Yorke distributed copies of The Universal Sigh in person at a record shop in East London. To perform the rhythmically complex King of Limbs live, Radiohead enlisted Portishead touring drummer Clive Deamer. Silway said of the two-drummer setup, "That was fascinating. One played in the traditional way, the other almost mimicked a drum machine. It was push and pull, like kids at play, really interesting." On June 24, Radiohead played a surprise performance on the Park stage at the 2011 Glastonbury Festival, performing songs from The King of Limbs before an audience for the first time. 106. In September, he played 2 dates at New York City's Rosalind Ballroom and made American TV appearances including a 1-hour special episode of The Colbert Report and the season premiere of Saturday Night Live. In February 2012, Radiohead began their first extended North American tour in 4 years, including dates in the United States, Canada and Mexico. Commercial performance. The retail edition of The King of Limbs debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 in the United States, with first-week sales of 69,000 copies. The following week, it peaked at number 3, selling 67,000 copies. In the United Kingdom, it debuted at number 7 on the UK Albums Chart, selling 33,469 copies in its first week. By April 2012, The King of Limbs has sold 307,000 retail copies in the US. The retail vinyl edition, excluding newspaper album sales, sold more than 20,000 copies in the UK in the first half of 2011, 12% of all vinyls sold in that period, and became the best-selling vinyl album of 2011. As of April 2015, it was the UK's second best-selling vinyl of the decade thus far. These figures describe retail sales after March 28, 2011 and do not include newspaper album, or download sales through Radiohead's website, where The King of Limbs was exclusively available for nearly 2 months prior to retail release, selling an estimated 300,000 to 400,000 copies. Radiohead's co-manager Chris Hufford estimated that Radiohead made more money from The King of Limbs than any of their previous albums, as most sales were made through the band's website without a record company. Critical reception. The King of Limbs received positive reviews. At Metacritic, which assigns a normalized rating out of 100 to reviews from mainstream critics, the album received an average score of 80 based on 40 reviews, indicating generally favorable reviews. BBC Music's Mike Diver described the album as a fans-pleasing 8th album from Britain's most consistently brilliant band. Michael Brider of the Boston Globe praised the tense calm these 8 songs maintain a composure that feels constantly ready to crack, commenting that, Wherein Rainbows was mellow but brisk an album that felt on its way somewhere these songs are eerie and insidious, creeping like shadows and, often because of the haunting voice of Thom Yorke, the occasional chill. Pop Matters wrote, The King of Limbs is a beautiful record, one that begs more of a conscious listen than its predecessor, but one that provides equal if different thrills in doing so. From a section War Marchand of the Vancouver Sun said that the album bridges Radiohead's many different styles, and is worth embracing. Mark Pitlick of Pitchfork called the album well-worn terrain for Radiohead, and while it continues to yield rewarding results, the band's signature game-changing ambition is missed. Pitchfork later named Give Up the Ghost as Best New Music, describing it as a highlight, and life-affirming. Robert Christgau awarded the album a 2-star honorable mention, and recommended the songs Little by Little, and Bloom. Los Angeles Times writer Ann Powers wrote that the album can be heard from several different angles. Fans and critics have already been registering wildly divergent reactions. Some think it's one of the band's best efforts. Others find it too low-key or similar to previous work. A few consider it awfully doomy, and a few others wish it were less abstract. In a retrospective 2015 article for Stereogum, Ryan Lees wrote that The King of Limbs is very good, occasionally great music by a pivotal band that nevertheless felt like something of a letdown because it wasn't, ultimately, some genius stroke none of us expected. The album was named one of the best of 2011 by several publications. The Wire and The Guardian both named it the 27th best of the year, Mojo the 47th, NME the 20th, Pop Matters the 10th, Uncut the 7th and Rolling Stone the 5th, the latter describing it as a record that grew all year in your room, and on stage. The King of Limbs was nominated for 5 categories in the 54th Grammy Awards: Best Alternative Music Album, Best Boxed or Special Limited Edition Package, Best Short-Form Music Video, Best Rock Performance and Best Rock Song. Track listing: all tracks written by Radiohead and produced by Radiohead and Nigel Godrich. Personnel: Radiohead, Colin Greenwood, Johnny Greenwood, Ed O'Brien, Phil Selway, Thom Yorke. Additional personnel: Niaz Ahmed Flagellan on Bloom, and Codex, Drew Brown additional engineering, Brian Cook additional assistance, Stanley Donwood cover art and packaging, Nigel Godrich production, engineering, Noel Langley Flagellan on Bloom, and Codex, Bob Ludwig mastering, Daryl Thorpe additional assistance, the London Telephilharmonic Orchestra, led by Levine Andrade and conducted by Robert Ziegler strings on Codex. Charts. Notes and references. External links: Official The King of Limbs website, Official The Universal Sigh website, Official Radiohead website.